The bell rang 3 times. No one was pulling the rope. And that's when the townsfolk started disappearing. Some say it was the devil. Others say it was something older. But only one woman rode in to find out the truth, Sister Irene. If you're ready to hear what really happened in Red Hollow, hit that subscribe button and comment 1 below, so I know you're listening. Because this isn't just a ghost story, it's a reckoning. She came from the east, wearing a black veil and carrying visions no man dared believe. The Vatican sent her west with nothing but scripture, silence, and a warning: don't trust the dead. The train dropped her off. The desert swallowed the tracks behind her. Now all that stood between Red Hollow and the thing that woke beneath that chapel was a nun who knew the shape of evil because she'd seen it before. They say God don't ride west of the Mississippi. Not since the blood dried on the chapel floor of Red Hollow. Folks out there don't talk much about what happened in that town. Just look down, spit in the dirt, and mutter something about the black veil in the wind. But if you stay long enough, if you listen close to the wind rolling off the canyons, you'll hear it. The whisper of footsteps on dry wood. A voice praying in Latin. A bell that rings when no hand is near it. And now, they say she's coming. Rode in alone, dressed head to toe in black, rosary around her neck, saddlebags full of scripture and secrets. The Vatican sent her, or so the whispers claim. A holy woman with eyes that see beyond the veil. Some say she's touched by angels. Others reckon it's something darker that guides her. Name's Sister Irene, born with the sight. That's what the old bishop called it. Visions, warnings, faces of the dead. Her mama had 'em 2 locked away in a madhouse before the girl could even read her first psalm. The church nearly locked her up too, till a bishop got a look in her eyes and decided she wasn't possessed, just chosen. Whatever that means. Now, years later, they've put her on a train heading west. Gave her a name, a map, and a warning. You'll find no sanctuary in Red Hollow. That town's been cursed ever since the nuns went missing from the old desert chapel. Just up and vanished one night in 1859. No blood, no screams, just silence and a bell that kept ringing long after the doors were locked. Folks tried to bless the place. Even brought in a gunslinger preacher from Amarillo. He went in with a Bible and a Colt .45. Neither one came out. But Sister Irene ain't like the others. She doesn't flinch at talk of devils. She listens, takes notes, watches the shadows like they're about to speak. And when that train whistle screams through the canyon and dust kicks up around the station, she steps down quiet and calm, like the desert's been waiting for her. They say she walks like she's been here before, like the land already knows her name. And maybe it does. Because evil don't always come with horns. Sometimes it wears a habit and smiles from the altar. And maybe, just maybe, the only thing that can send it back to hell is a woman who's not afraid to stare into the dark and whisper, "Thy will be done." Before we ride deeper into this haunted tale, if this story already has you curious, do me a small favor, hit that subscribe button, give the video a like, and drop a 1 in the comments, so I know you're with me, ready to follow Sister Irene down this dusty trail where scripture meets shadows. All right. Now let me tell you what she found when she stepped into Red Hollow, because that's where the real fear began. Red Hollow don't appear on most maps anymore. And those that still mark it down well, the ink's always a little faded, like the paper itself is trying to forget. The town sits low between 2 bluffs, a place choked by dust and regret. The kind of place where even the crows don't linger long. When Sister Irene stepped off that train, she expected trouble. What she didn't expect was how quiet that trouble would be. Not a single soul greeted her. No station master. No horses tied out front. The saloon doors creaked in the wind, swinging back and forth like someone had just left in a hurry. But no one ever returned. The sheriff's office was boarded up. Church bells rusted silent. The old chapel up the hill, its steeple crooked like a snapped finger, loomed against the setting sun. And yet, the cross still stood, blackened, blistered, but unbroken. As she made her way through the main street, Irene began to notice the signs. Salt lines across doorways, broken mirrors covered in sheets, symbols carved into the door frames, Latin, ancient, protective, desperate. This town hadn't just been abandoned. It had prepared for something. Down by the general store, she met the first and only person who would speak to her, a girl no older than 15. Barefoot and wild-eyed, clutching a rosary like it might burst into flame at any moment. "They come after sunset," the girl said. "Who?" Sister Irene asked, her voice low. "The ones in the black veils," she whispered. "They ain't right. They move like smoke, whisper Latin in the wind. You don't see 'em, but you feel 'em. And if the bell rings, it's too late." The girl ran off before Irene could ask more. But that night, as the wind picked up and the sky burned crimson, Irene found herself staring up at the chapel, the very heart of Red Hollow's curse. That's when it happened. The bell rang. Not once, but 3 times. Long, slow, hollow, the sound rolled down the hillside like thunder. And with it came the chill. A sharp, unnatural cold that made her breath fog despite the desert heat. Then she saw it, just for a second, moving between the pews inside the chapel. A shape, a habit, a veil, a nun. But this one didn't walk. She drifted, eyes hollow, skin gray as ash, lips moving with no sound until the second bell rang and Sister Irene heard it clear as day. Dominus Infernum. The Lord of Hell. She dropped to her knees, clutched her cross, and whispered the only prayer that came to her. It wasn't fear she felt, it was something worse. Recognition. This wasn't the first time she'd met the thing in the veil. And it sure as hell wouldn't be the last. And if you've made it this far, partner, go ahead and hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. Like the video to let the story ride further, and drop a comment with the word faith if you believe light can still survive in a place as dark as Red Hollow. Because what Sister Irene was about to face next wasn't just a haunted town. It was something that followed her all the way from the other side. They say the devil don't walk, he waits. And in Red Hollow, he'd been waiting a long, long time. After the third bell faded into the dust, Sister Irene stood alone beneath the blood-colored sky, eyes fixed on the chapel. The same voice that once told her Mary points the way, now whispered something different in the wind. You've been here before. But she hadn't. Not in body. Not in this life. And yet, her heart knew the steps like she was walking an old memory left behind in the bones of this desert. She climbed the chapel hill with only a lantern and a prayer. The path was littered with rosary beads, shattered, sun-bleached, forgotten. She didn't know if they were dropped in fear or offered in faith. But one thing was certain, no one who walked this trail had ever come back the same. Inside the chapel, the air was thick. Not with dust, but with presence. Something still lived here, or something never died. The pews were empty, but the walls were carved with names. Sister Agnes, Sister Ruth, Sister Magdalene. All gone. She found the altar desecrated, its marble cracked down the center like a wound. On it sat a single item, a tarnished silver mirror covered in linen. She reached for it slowly, hands trembling. The wind stopped. When she lifted the cloth, she didn't see her own reflection. She saw Valak, the same unholy spirit she'd faced years ago across the ocean. The one she'd thought sealed beneath stone and sacrament. But now it stared at her from this glass, wearing the face of a nun and the grin of a wolf. You didn't bury me. The voice rasped from nowhere and everywhere. You brought me. She stepped back, but the mirror shattered on its own, exploding outward, as if something inside had tried to get out. And from the shards, smoke began to rise. Black, oily, full of screams. It spilled across the floor, took shape in the aisle, and with it came the stench of fire and holy things twisted into mockery. Then came the whisper again. You left the door open, sister. She turned just in time to see the chapel doors slam shut behind her. Locked. No way out. This wasn't just some haunted church. This was a gate. A place where hell could bleed through. Her visions hadn't led her here to banish evil. They'd led her home. Because Valak didn't choose places at random. It returned to where it had been welcomed once before. To where broken faith left cracks in the walls. And Sister Irene. She was more than a witness. She was the key. Some battles are fought with bullets, others with blood. But in Red Hollow, it was faith that had been tested first. The chapel had gone dark, lantern extinguished, candles blown cold by a wind that came from beneath the floor. Sister Irene stood frozen in the nave, staring at the smoke swirling where the altar once stood. A shape moved within it, slow, deliberate. Not walking, gliding. The folds of its veil fluttered without breeze, and its face was just wrong. Hollow. Too smooth, too still. It was wearing the habit of a nun. But there was no soul behind those eyes. Irene reached for her crucifix only to find her rosary melting in her hand, the beads dripping like wax. The entity hissed. You took vows? To him. But this place belongs to me. The chapel trembled, and with it the visions returned. Not memories, prophecies. She saw fire devour holy books, sisters nailed to pews, a rider in black galloping across salt-cracked earth, dragging a chain of crosses behind him, each one burning. At the end of the chain, her. And above it all, Valak towering like a storm cloud, wings made of funeral veils, teeth like pewter nails. She dropped to her knees and pressed her palm to the stone floor. It was warm now, almost breathing. Then came a sound. Bootsteps. Not from outside, from beneath. Something was rising. Irene backed away, but the center of the chapel split open like a dry riverbed in a quake. From the pit below, a figure emerged, half man, half ash, with eyes like burning coals and lips stitched shut. A brand marked his chest, a pentagram, scarred into flesh. He was a priest once. Valak's voice coiled through the rafters. Now he serves me. It was one of the missionaries who'd come here decades ago. Turned, broken, hollowed out. A vessel for the darkness now. Sister Irene whispered Psalm 23 under her breath. But the creature snarled, shaking the chapel walls with rage. It lunged toward her. She ran, through the vestry, down the stone steps, into the crypt's chambers lined with bones and rosaries, the dead packed tight and still praying. And there in a small alcove she found it. An old saddlebag, dust-covered. Inside a silver crucifix, a single revolver, and 3 bullets etched with Latin script. Blessed rounds. Relics from the old preacher who vanished here years ago. He came with fire. You'll leave with ash. Valak's whisper echoed through the crypt. Irene didn't answer. She loaded the gun. Faith didn't mean silence. Not anymore. If God wouldn't ride west of the Mississippi, then maybe it was time she did the riding for him. They say the desert doesn't bury its dead. It keeps them walking, keeps them whispering. And tonight, the whole damn desert was listening. Sister Irene stood at the threshold of the chapel, revolver in hand, habit-torn scripture dried to her skin by sweat and blood. Behind her, bones of nuns, long forgotten. Before her, the gate to hell itself. The floor still pulsed like a wounded heart, and the smoke curled like serpent tongues beckoning. She didn't flinch. The creature waiting inside was no longer wearing the face of a nun. Valak had shed its disguise. What stood before her now was something ancient, skeletal wings, a crown of twisted thorns, eyes like pits that pulled light inward. "You should have stayed in Rome," it hissed. "I wasn't sent," she replied. "I was called." The Latin-etched bullets gleamed in the cylinder like little prayers cocked and ready. She raised the gun steady. The creature lunged. The first shot tore through the darkness like thunder on a summer plain. It didn't kill Valak, but it slowed, it staggered it. The second round knocked the altar clean in half. A storm of salt and ash burst upward. And then, silence. Valak laughed. It echoed through the chapel like 100 voices all weeping. "You are alone." Irene took a step forward, and in a voice that carried beyond the veil, she answered, "No, I'm not." The wind outside shifted. The bell rang once, then twice, then the third time. Just like that first night, but this time something changed. From the corners of the chapel, soft whispers rose, voices in prayer. Familiar voices, sisters long dead. Agnes, Ruth, Magdalene, the ones Irene thought lost. Their spirits surrounded her, each holding a candle of ghostly flame. They weren't trapped. They were waiting. Sister Irene stepped into the center of the chapel where the old bloodstains had dried into crosses and lifted the final bullet to her lips. She whispered a single word, "Redemptio." Then she fired. The bullet didn't strike flesh. It struck truth. A beam of holy fire split the rafters, cutting through the demon like scripture carved into stone. Valak howled, not in pain, but in fury. Its wings ignited, and the chapel began to crumble. Sister Irene dropped to her knees. Smoke filled her lungs, the candles dimmed, and just before everything collapsed, she felt a hand light as breath lift her up and carry her through the fire. At sunrise, Red Hollow was quiet again. No bell, no footsteps, just wind. They say she walked out of that chapel covered in ash eyes, clear as a baptismal pool. Said not a word. Just nodded once to the sky and rode east. Some say she died in there. Others believe she was never truly alive. But in the years that followed, whenever evil rose in the dust, whenever the bells rang 3 times, they said the nun would return. At its heart, this story isn't just about demons or dusty chapels. It's about faith standing tall in a land where even angels fear to tread. Sister Irene's journey reminds us that darkness isn't always loud or obvious. It creeps into silence, into doubt, into places we've long abandoned. But God does not abandon us. He sends unlikely messengers, not warriors in armor, but women in veils, broken yet brave. The message is clear: when you carry light in your soul, you become the flame that holds back the night. Evil may rise again, but so will the faithful. The Lord doesn't ask us to be perfect. He asks us to stand. And sometimes that means stepping into the fire, trusting He'll carry you through. This tale is a holy whisper to anyone who's lost their way. No matter how far the desert stretches, grace still finds you. And that, my friend, was just the beginning. What Sister Irene uncovered in Red Hollow was only one chapter. Because evil doesn't end, it moves. So, if you're ready to ride deeper into the mystery, click on the next video and keep your lantern lit. Because where we're going next, even prayers might not reach.